those fears. Yeah, I've been there. Sometimes your life don't.
So we see LeBron fly by all the planets of all the Warner Brothers series. The Game of Thrones planet. He flies by the Casablanca planet, which is an old movie for all you people who don't know what that is, which is actually a good old movie, by the way. We see him go fly by the Matrix planet, the Wizard of Oz planet. He flies by Harry Potter world. I mean, this scene does make me kind of think like you're in a ride. It reminds me of that old Hanna-Barbera ride they used to have at whatever park that was. But again, if you use intellectual properties in a film like this, if you do it in an entertaining way, then if it serves the plot of the movie and you do it in an entertaining way, then it's part of the plot. Then that's good. That's not something that's stupid. It's creative. It's being sleazy by flexing your muscles, by showing your properties, but you're doing it in a creative, plot-driven, interesting way. And that's what the first Space Jam did, and that's what the sequel did. If you hated that stuff in the original Space Jam, then it makes sense you'd hate it even more in the sequel. But if you love the original Space Jam, then this kind of stuff fits in line with what Space Jam is. You know, planets, digital, space, more of the Warner Brothers universe. The original Space Jam wasn't just a celebration of the Looney Tunes. It was also a celebration of Warner Brothers as a company. They're more awesome as a company, not just for the Looney Tunes, but because of everything they created. Now, I don't love everything Warner Brothers created, but they're an amazing entertainment company. And I love them more than Disney. I know this scene where he flies by the planets, and when they go to the planets and stuff, it does kind of feel like a giant commercial for HBO Max, which Warner Brothers owns. And I get that. But once again, if it's done in an entertaining way, then that's not stupid. A storytelling perspective, it's basically a very Looney thing to do. So to me, it fits in line with the spirit of the Looney Tunes. Now, especially later on when they go to the other planets and we see the Looney Tunes interacting with other characters from other things, it makes me think like this movie is basically the movie version of all those old Kids WB commercials that they used to have back in the 90s and in the early 2000s, where, you know, all those old Kids WB commercials where they would have the Looney Tunes and all the cartoon characters from all the different TV series interact with one another. And that was amazing to see that as a kid. So if you grew up with that stuff and you loved it, then I don't know why you wouldn't love it in this movie. That's what I don't understand. I mean, this is the same thing, guys, as those commercials. So it's actually kind of like the concept for the original Space Jam movie, where the idea started from commercials and they turned that into a movie. So they did the same thing with the Kids WB commercials and made that into Space Jam 2. And it's awesome, just like those old Kids WB commercials were awesome. Again, don't be like LeBron in this movie. Don't be super cynical. Enjoy it. Enjoy the Warner Brothers universe and seeing all these characters interact with one another from different dimensions and planets. It's interesting. I think it's a cool idea. So LeBron crash lands in Looney Tune World, and the Nike swish is engraved into the ground. A lot of people found this moment kind of cringy. I mean, it's product placement, but I don't know. I think it's supposed to be a little humorous. It's supposed to be kind of funny, even though no one thinks it's funny. I mean, I don't think it's funny either, but I think that they were kind of going for that idea that that's supposed to be a humorous moment. But it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's what he represents. I mean, when he also crash lands, there's a puff of smoke showing a ball going into the net. It's whatever. LeBron sees the clock going down, the timer, and we'll go back to the clock later. Looney Tune World is abandoned. No tunes are there. It's like unexpected. And I love that about the film. You expect all the Looney Tunes to be there and be excited to see him there and gather around him like in the original. But no, this time, no one's to be found. And that's different. And I didn't expect this to happen. I assumed it was going to be like the first movie where they were all there to greet him and they're all happy to see him and everything. The fact that all the Looney Tunes aren't there, it's like a metaphor for the state of the Looney Tunes in modern day, how they're like a relic of the past. They're not as popular as they used to be. This moment in the film where they're all not there, it's supposed to represent that. And I think that's pretty cool. I love the planet of Looney Tune World. And we know it's called that because there's a sign. All of the pieces of the parts of the old Looney Tunes cartoons, they're all blended together, which is very cool like aesthetically. The fact that they're all blended together really confirms further this concept that the Looney Tunes are ultimately a family. In the original Space Jam in Looney Tune Land, you can see stuff from the old cartoons in the background, which I thought was amazing. But this time it's amped up even further, where there's even more specific things from the old episodes you can see in the background. The trees from Planet X, Pepe Le Pew with the Eiffel Tower, Speedy Gonzalez's stuff. It's more references to the old episodes that we loved that you didn't get to see in the backgrounds in the original Space Jam in Looney Tune Land. A lot of hardcore fans, such as myself, are pretty perplexed when we first got to see Looney Tune World, because all of us fans that love the original Space Jam, we all know that, well, the Looney Tunes live underneath the Earth, right? So if this is a sequel to Space Jam, and it is, because it references the first movie, it's not its own thing, the bullshit you heard a million times. It's not. It's a sequel to the original, which is why 2 should be in the fucking title. But anyway, I have a little interesting theory as to how both of these realms of the Looney Tunes can actually coexist together, where it fits somehow. You see, I remember little things, and in the original Space Jam, they were always referred to their place underneath the ground as Looney Tune Land. It's mentioned a few times in the film. They never call it world. It's Looney Tune Land. So it's a land, right? It's in like the center of the Earth. And this film, it's called Looney Tune World. And it's a planet. And there's a sign that says Looney Tune World, so we know that's what it's called. It kind of makes sense that they have their own planet in like a computer because they're animated. Warner Brothers owns them, so that kind of makes sense. My theory is that the Looney Tunes travel through a portal, like where their home really is Looney Tune World, okay? That's their real home, right? But what they do is they travel in a portal in Looney Tune World, and this portal takes them to Looney Tune Land, which is underneath the Earth. So they travel through the portal, and why would they go to Looney Tune Land underneath the Earth? For what reason? Why? Well, to film episodes of the Looney Tunes show for all the Earthlings. Because we know in the original Space Jam, MJ's kids are watching Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner cartoon, and Porky interrupts it. As soon as they leave, nothing happens. This is because the cable wires are not just, where they normally are to us. They secretly are underneath the ground, way underneath the ground, the cable wires, all the way into the center of the Earth, where the Looney Tunes are filming episodes, and then when they're completed, they're magically or whatever sent above to the Earthlings to watch. Okay? You with me so far? And they can't do all that shit if they're just on their world. So they travel through a portal to go to Looney Tune Land. See, there's Looney Tune World and Looney Tune Land. It's different. I don't know, it's just a little theory I have to make them both make sense, to coexist together. If talking about all this stuff makes you think about Looney Tunes Back in Action, like how does that make sense? Well, I can't answer that. Looney Tunes Back in Action probably takes place in another dimension. It's probably the same dimension that the events of Who Framed Roger Rabbit exists in, where the Looney Tunes are just part of society and they live above ground and all that stuff. And everyone knows that they're real. Now, the fact that Michael Jordan made a cameo appearance in Looney Tunes Back in Action is fascinating. I might be able to explain that. Perhaps the Looney Tunes from the Space Jam dimension and the Back in Action dimension, perhaps they both are experiencing the same things in both dimensions. So in the Back in Action dimension, they also teamed up with Michael Jordan to defeat the Monstars. But it happened above Earth? I don't know. Something like that. Or like subconsciously, for some reason, the Looney Tunes in the Back in Action dimension have the same memories that the Looney Tunes in the Space Jam dimension also possess. So even though it may not have exactly happened, the stuff of Space Jam and Back in Action, perhaps the Looney Tunes just know it for some reason, because it's part of like their DNA or something. Like all the Looney Tunes from every dimension, they are connected all for some reason, because they're all Looney Tunes or something. Like they share the same memories or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, let's get back to my review here. We see the first appearance of our greatest star. Bugs Bunny appears, and him and LeBron meet each other for the first time. It's pretty cool. It's a memorable scene in the movie. And I love that LeBron feels emotional when he sees Bugs Bunny, because he's seeing his childhood come to life, because he loved Bugs Bunny when he was a kid. I don't know. It was cool. It was interesting. It was different than the original. of course, I have to mention this. Big Chungus appears. I mean, it's okay. I really don't have a problem with Big Chungus making this, like, cameo appearance. But some people think it's cringy. I think it's just funny. I think it's cool that people think that Bugs being fat in that old cartoon from the 40s or whatever. I think that's cool that people like that because that's supposed to be a funny moment in that episode of the old Looney Tunes. So the fact that young people today like that, it's awesome. So why not have it appear in this movie? I mean, it's not for too long. But anyway, so Bugs chases him around. They're starting to get to know each other. You learn that Bugs misses Looney Tunes, and Bugs explains how they all got separated. They both see the clock. LeBron explains how he needs to get his son back, and can you help? All that kind of stuff. Bugs refers to the events of the original Space Jam, confirming that this is in fact a sequel, and they all know it. That was a really awesome moment. Honestly, the first time watching this movie, there was a few moments where I got emotionally choked up. The scene where Bugs has tears in his eyes or whatever, and he's looking at the portrait in the bar, and he says, "Yeah, family." And they show that old picture. I mean, I felt something from that. It's cool. This film has certain emotional moments in it that aren't in the original Space Jam, at least for the most part. Like, this film is more, it's deeper, it's more emotional than the original, I think. There's just more story going on here. Even though there was a lot of story in the original Space Jam, don't get me wrong. I love that we get to see Bugs trying to recreate the Looney Tunes in, like, sculpture form by having Porky being a pile of pumpkins. And you can even see Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote that he created outside of the bar. And you only see that for like 2 seconds, barely, when you watch the movie. It's super quick, kind of like the Roadrunner. Pause the movie in that moment because you can see them there. Also, the fact that the Looney Tunes split up, it's similar to Dom and LeBron. Even though they have disagreements and they fight, deep down they both still love each other, and that's just like the Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes have fights all the time. All the time the boys fight. But at the end of the day, they still love each other. So they're trying to make a connection between LeBron and Dom and the Looney Tunes. How it's a similar situation that both Bugs and LeBron are going through. Bugs wants the Looney Tunes to come back, and LeBron wants Dom to come back. Now, there's a really interesting difference they made in the sequel. You see, in the original Space Jam, the Looney Tunes needed Michael Jordan's help, whereas in the sequel, LeBron needs the Looney Tunes' help. That's different. That's a complete reversal. The way it's done and written, very well done. I know it's kind of the same, but it's still pretty different, I think.